Welcome to the Elokus channel, and this is class number 12 in the discourse Vayichan Shom Yisroel, which is the third discourse in the great book, Shashagdimu 5672, class number 12. This class is dedicated to my dear friend, Shner Zalman, Ben Yabad L'chaim Tovim, Rabbi Yehuda, our dear friend Zalmi Heidensfeld, whose holy soul ascended today. May Hashem have mercy upon us already and take away all sadness. And the family shouldn't know any more pain. And may Zalmi's soul soar to the highest heights and bring us down a lot of blessings. And he should come back over here soon with the coming of Mashiach and the resurrection. May that be now. So this should be L'schus Zalmi, who is such a radiant neshama and powerful light in this world. We are holding over here. We left off just concluding chapter 10, but there was a tiny, small little parentheses that I skipped. So I want to go back to that. We were learning that the vessels of Atzilus, notwithstanding how far and lofty and high they are, because they are divinity, they are still closer to the physical, even to the physical limited creations. It means the separation that separates them from the physical creations, which is a vast, incomprehensible separation, yet it is still less of a separation than separates these vessels, these very vessels of Atzilus, from the Oiros, from the lights, and from the Or Ein Sof, from the infinite, because the infinite is infinite, the Oiros are infinite, and the Kelim are limited, they are Mugabal. And not only that, he said, they are responsible for the design and for the character of everything that exists in the three lower worlds. As I spoke to you about the apples and about the tulips and all the other stuff we discussed in the earlier class, how the essential characteristics of all these entities exist already within the divine realm of the Kelim of Atzilus. The Kelim of Atzilus already have and bring about all these blends. The blending of all the attributes are really what produces all the variation that exists in the myriads and myriads and endless forms of creatures and beings, both in the spiritual world and in the physical world. So since the essential ingredients that is being transmitted to create the world, that is becoming, as he discussed earlier, it's becoming the Naran, it's becoming the Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, the soul, the spirit, the life force of these creatures, although it's creating it, which means it's above the creations, it's creating it. But the very fact that it is creating, each energy creates that particular creature, it's because the energy has already been formed and designed to be with those properties, with that, and as much as it's possible to say on the divine energy, that it has already these particular free features. And in that sense, it is closer to the creation than it is to the infinite lights that are beyond it, which are undefined and unspecified and have no particularization in character and the like. That's what we were learning. And now he supports that with a little parenthesis over here. As stated elsewhere, this is the last parenthesis in chapter 10. The B'chinas Ihu, Shemisyachadim Garmiu, that the when we say that Hashem, it said there's a statement in Zohar that Iu v'garmu chad, that Hashem, which is the Or, the light, v'garmu we say Iu v'chiyuhu chad, he and his life forces are one. That means God and we discussed the life forces are the Oiros, the lights. These are the lights that are in the Sfirot. So Hashem is unified with those lights. But then we also continue when we say Iu v'garmu chad, God is one with his garments, or also means the vessels. He is one with the garments, which are the vessels of Atzilus. In what sense is he one with the vessels of Atzilus? He's one with them because he joins with these vessels he extends himself into the vessels and is one with these vessels, so that through these limited vessels and definitive vessels, God creates definitive and limited creations. And over here, you need to have two opposites, because on the one hand, you need still to be infinite and less and undefined, because only when you're infinite and undefined do you have the omnipotence to create, because only an omnipotent, undefined, limitless being can create something from nothing. But on the other hand, in order for the creations to be something specific and defined, the energy needs to also be conforming to the creations, which is the total opposite, which has limitations. So the way it works is because God himself unifies with the vessels, so the vessels contribute the limitations and definitions. And the investment of God himself into the vessels, that contributes the limitlessness, the infinity, the boundlessness to create something from nothing. So over here we have a unification of Ihu, which is Hashem himself, and we have also Garmuhu. Garmuhu are the vessels. And he's going to now show us an interesting thing, that although the Garmuhu, the vessels, are also divine, yet we apply to them the concept of limitation. Why? Because we say about them that they're numbered, which means they could be counted. It's contained within a certain number, as opposed to the power of God himself vested in the vessels is beyond the whole notion of number, of being able to be counted. In other words, the he himself is Bali Mispar. He is above all number, which means above limitation. And the vessels, the Garmuhu, the vessels, they are already within the range of being counted. What does that mean? Just like creations, let's take physical creations, could be counted. There might be so many, but you can count. There's a number for how many human beings are on the planet. I think it's close, about 8 billion these days. There's also a number of how many frogs there are, how many insects there are. So many insects. I was once doing a class and I decided to explore how many insects there are. I forgot the number, but there's an estimation of how many insects there are. And by the way, for those who want to know, the most common insect, I wouldn't have thought. I would have thought it's flies or spiders. But the most insects is beetles. That was like really interesting. And and it has the most types. There's like, crap, I forgot the numbers. I gave a class, I think a couple of months ago. I had to do a class for children on a deep Hasidic concept. And in order to make it entertaining, I decided to talk about bugs. And in that talk, I did a whole exploration on insects and on bugs and on beetles. And I found that beetles have the most different types, and enormous amount of how many different types of beetles there are. But anyways, they all number. And spiritual, and even things that seem to be like beyond number, almost like how many pieces of sand are there, but it has a number. It's an astronomical number, but there's a number. And even stars, there is a number. They could be counted. And spiritual beings also could be counted. And here's the chidush, here's the great novelty that we're saying, that the divine energy of the kelim, that is the life force and the soul, spirit of all these things, is also within the range of being counted. But Ihu, the God, the Hashem himself, what's above the vessels, he is not within the range of being counted. But what is he proving from here is that the vessels are closer to the creations, because they are also, we can apply to them the notion of counting. Let's read it. The he himself, who unifies him, Garmuhu, with the vessels. He, the one who is vesting himself to the vessels, he is without a number. And that's for that very reason he has limitless power to create something from nothing. Because if the power that would vest itself in the vessels would become limited, it would immediately lose its potency to create something from nothing. So it remains infinite. And that's the incredible fusion over here of the infinite and the finite. But the garmuhu, which are the vessels, who bepchinas mispar. He doesn't say it could be counted. It's within the realm, in the range of numbers, of account, of being countable. Now he adds v'gama oras pchinas ihu she'al yedei garmuhu. We can take it even a step higher. Not only the vessels themselves are within the range of being counted, but once the light that has vested itself in the vessels is shining through the vessels. So let's take a look at these vessels, and now we're going to differentiate between the input and the output. The input, what's flowing into the vessels, the soul of the vessels themselves, is above number. And that's God's representative, so to speak, and that brings the infinite into the equation. However, the output that's coming out of the vessels, which is not just vessels, the energy is going through the vessels. So once the energy goes through the vessels contain the energy as well, create a certain limitation onto that energy that's flowing out. And therefore he says, V'gama oras pchenas ihu shal yedei garmu, and the radiance of the heat, even though it's the or, it's the light, but once it's being processed, so to speak, into the kalim, into the vessels, and is moving outward, mevuar sham, it is explained over there, the yesh loimar, that we can say, shuhu b'pchenas mispar, it is also in the range of number. Shazeu inyan, which is something that we're familiar with already. This is the idea that the sages say something astounding. Shir kaimishal yaitze bereshis, the size of the height of the creator, the one of God who created. Remember we learned about this a while ago, about 15, 20 classes ago. We learned that there is a size. The sages say 236 million, billion, whatever we had. We made the counting then. 236 10,000 parselis, right? And we discussed that. I forgot already. I'm getting rusty. I forgot already what we discussed back then about the size of it. It's an astronomical size. And then we also explained when it says parsa, which generally is a certain distance, a 4 mil. We spoke about how many miles it is. However, that's the physical parsa. Here we're talking about spiritual parsa, which is much, much bigger than that, whatever it is. But we speak about a size of the creator. So what is that? Obviously, to the Or Ein Sof, the God himself, you can't speak about a size. It means after he vests himself in the vessels. But it's not only the vessels, it's even the light. Once the light is vested in the vessels and is being expressed through the vessels, that energy force, that life force, is within this, in the realm of measurement. And if it's in the realm of measurement, it's in the realm of numbers as well. Okay. Hold on. Yes. However, as we said, Ihu himself is not within number, but the main point that he was that he's concluding over here is that the kalim of Atzilus are very much yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. They're ein aroch. They have no comparison to the infinity beyond them, and therefore that explains the element which we said regarding Atzilus, that Atzilus is not a continuation of above, but something new. But on the other hand, we also learned that Atzilus is just an emanation and just an expression of the hidden, not something new. From that, he's going to continue in the next chapter. That's referring to the lights, the oiros, not the kelim. The lights are still simple. They're not divine. They're above all boundaries and limitations. And those lights are just emanations of what is higher, as we will see in chapter 11. Let's first go through the Kitzer. Kitzer does a little summary over here. And even though the kelim are also atzilas, okay? This, in other words, even though the kelim are considered atzilus, and therefore, how can we say that they are limited and something new? He says, they're like a spark that got like sparks from a fire that got separated from the fire. Okay, look in this drush, which is a drush, I think, of the Tzemach Tzedek, where over there he discusses this. It's like a spark that flies away from a fire. It's the same substance of the fire, and that's why we say about it, it's atzilus, and it's divine, but it's also separated because it's already in a state of gvul, of limitation. And therefore, so now, do we look at these kelim as a continuation of God, a continuation of Elokus? Is there some kind of a continuation from above Atzilus into the Kelim? Or do we say, no, it's completely something new? So then it will depend. Like we discussed again, this is he's summarizing the last few classes. He says, when we are measuring it up to Adam Kadmon, to primordial man. Remember, we said over there is already Kalim. It's just that the Kalim are not noticed. And even if we go higher and we go to the letters of the Rishimu, the letters of the tracing that remained, the power of the Gvul, the power of Ein Sof, the power of God when he's to limit himself, which emerged after the Tzimtzum, and the letters of the Rishimu, Acharat Tzimtzum, after the contraction. Now, over here, it's not considered a complete new entity. It's like a continuation. However, to the Orein Sof, that is believable, both, and remember this, both the Orein Sof that's infinite, that's above the Tzimtzum. But even the Orein Sof that comes through after the Tzimtzum, through the Kav, and even the Orein Sof that vests itself in the Kalim themselves. But since it still has that flavor, that energy of the Orein Sof, which is Ein Sof, compared to that, the Kalim are Ein Aroch, have no, as if they're came out of nowhere. You can't even see how in the world these Kalim would ever be able to produce from the Orein Sof. They're not an evolution. There's something totally new. And utterly nothing, because anything that's finite compared to infinity is nothing. Well, the Gaba Orein Sof applicable to the Orein Sof that is limited. And more, the Gam, and I added that when I say Orein Sof, it includes also, like he said earlier, the Or that's in the Kalim, because that's part of the Orein Sof. But now he's also saying, and even regarding the root of the vessels themselves, but when it's in the letters of the Rishimu, while the Rishimu is indifferentiable from the limitlessness of God, that means before the Tzimtzum, remember that, the letters of the Rishimu, the power of God, self-limiting power, while it was when the lights are still turned on, when the infinity is still felt. And also to the Rishimu before the Tzimtzum, to that, over there, there's no metzias at all in his words that he said earlier. There's no substance at all. All we sense over here is infinity. And therefore, when we measure up the vessels to them, this is like a shock. Like, where in the world did these guys come from? And more than that, it's so far off from the Orein Sof that it is farther from the Orein Sof than it is from the physical material creations. And that's why there is an expression in Chassidus, we say it many times, in many places, that Chachma of Atzilus, which is the highest point of Atzilus, but when we're looking at the Keli of it, the vessel of it, the Chachma of Atzilus is compared to God himself, is equally nothing to the Orein Sof, compared to the Orein Sof, is equally nothing like a grain of sand. In other words, it isn't any more valuable to the Or Ein Sof than a grain of sand. Because they're both absolutely, we can't even imagine this, absolutely nothing. And that's what he's saying. And even the more than the difference that exists between physicality and Atzilus, in which we say that physicality is considered so pathetic and so ridiculously limited, and therefore so nothing to Atzilus, yet the nothingness of the vessels of Atzilus to the Or Ein Sof is much, much bigger. The gap that divides them. Cool. So this is a conclusion of chapter 10, with the parentheses, with everything. However, he comes in Perek Yud Aleph. Now we start chapter 11. However, all of this only applies to the vessels. But the lights, it's interesting. I'm going to make my own little, it's interesting. This is chapter 11. And the difference between 10 and 11 is that 11 has vessels, 10 has vessels, because there are 10 sphirot, so there are 10 vessels. 11 is really beyond vessels. It's the chad v'loy b'chushban. It's the level of God as he transcends all the vessels. So it's interesting that it's chapter 11 where he's turning back to the lights. And all of this is in the vessels. But the lights of Atzilus, now when he says the lights of Atzilus, he's not talking about Keser. He's talking about the lights that go into the kelim. The lights that go into the vessels. But yet, since they are lights, since they are the emanations, the lights of Atzilus, they are not a new entity. They are just a hidden potential or a hidden power that up till now was hidden in the source, and now it was illuminated outward. It was shined out. And so it's not like a spark that came off from the fire and separated, but rather it's like a beam of light. It's like light coming from the fire, which the light was inside the fire, and now it's just emanating outward. They're just a revelation of the concealment from the Or Ein Sof, from the infinite one, Hamatzel, the emanator. Why? They are opposite than the Kalim. If you remember, the Kalim we discussed, the way Kalim come about, and all the classes we gave in the last that we're holding out, chapter 12. So probably in the first 7-8 classes, we were talking about the concept of how the vessels come into being, and we discussed how they are come into being through a disconnect, not through a connection. They're opposite of a state of dveikus. They're not a beam of light. Every element of God that is involved in producing these vessels is producing them through in a non-connecting manner. But that's when you're dealing with Kalim. But the Oira is the opposite. Light, if you disconnect the light from its source, there's no light. The whole notion of light is that light is attached to its source, and it's an indirect link and direct connection to the source. Because these Oiros, these lights, they are produced by the one light. First, it's one light, which is the Kav, which is, remember, after the Tzimtzum, Hashem reintroduces his light. That's the Kav. And that Kav eventually shines forth the 10 spheroids, the 10 lights of Atzilus. They're coming into being from the Kav, who b'pchenas kiruv is in a manner of closeness. Or, because the light, kashur, is tied, the davuk, and is cleaving ba'or ein sof. It is attached and bound to the Or Ein Sof, to the infinite one, Hamatzil, the emanator, kishal heves akshura begacheles, like a flame that is connected to the coal. Unlike a spark that flies away, goes away from the fire source. The flames are leaping out of the coals. I imagine you have wood burning, there's flames leaping out. The very flames themselves were in the wood or in the coals, and now they're just coming forth. So that's the idea of the lights. They're of the Or Ein Sof, and they're just in a manner of attachment and connection. They are emanating outwards to be the Or of Chesed, the Or of Gevura, and so forth. Based on this, we were kind of going to make the argument that there is not much chachma there, not much chesed there, because if it's Ein Sof, means it's not the definition, it's just pure simple lights. But he's going to challenge that in the next Maamor, as we're going to see, because he's going to bring forth the idea that the oir, we have to say, already is tainted a little bit to chesed or a little bit to gevura. We can't say the lights are just pure, undefined lights, but we're going to speak about that later. But for now, for the conversation right now, let us see the lights that are emanating still as an absolute attachment. It's still attached, and therefore it's just an emanation and revelation of the power of the Ein Sof emanating outward, showing itself. Like flames that are tied to the coal. And therefore, Hein, and that's the reason why Hem bebchinas belima. Oh, yeah, I forgot that this is what he's going to say over here, and that's the reason why they have no definition. But when the Sefer Yetzirah, when in the book of formation, when it speaks about the Sfirot, it speaks about the Sfiros, and he says as the Sfira is belima. Belima means without substance. So the point over here is that it's not a substance of kindness or a substance. You can't define it as a metzias, as something. So it would seem like what he's saying now over here is that the kelim, the vessels, are bibchenas metzias. They are a substance. But the oir, the lights, are belima, without a substance. Shaloi bibchenas mohus. They're not in a state of something, of substance, metzias, and somethingness. Midos, whether they are the energies of the sfirot of the emotions, the kindness, the discipline, the compassion, or v'koichais, or any type of power, any type of specific power. They're belima, they don't have a substance. This would be how these lights, because they're attached, see, these lights are attached. He referred to the Orein Sof Hamatzel, the Orein Sof, the emanator. Now, who's the Orein Sof Hamatzel? Although many times the Orein Sof Hamatzel is referring to the Orein Sof that's before the Tzimtzum, but now particularly, no, he's talking about just the level of Orein Sof that's higher than Atzilus. Atzilus is no more Orein Sof in the sense that Atzilus is already Sfirot, attributes. This is the Orein Sof that's like Keser. The level of Keser is called Orein Sof. It's Ein Sof, like, and in general, the Kav. The entire Kav is a revelation of the Orein Sof. Now he's taking it further, but the Kav itself, how does that relate to the Orein Sof that's before the Tzimtzum? So he says over here as well, it's in a state of continuation and attachment. The way the Kav comes from the Orein Sof before the Tzimtzum is in a manner of attachment, meaning not in a disconnect. It's in a state of connection. And then this Kav that produces the 10 Sfirot, the Oiros, the lights of the 10 Sfiros, is also in a state of connection. So we never lose the connection. It's always a continuum. And so to the Kav from the Orein Sof, is also in a state of attachment. Like it says in the Eitz Chaim from the Arizal, Shahakav, that the thread, this line, Noigeya, touches, Vidavuk, and is attached, Be'ein Sof Baruch Hu, in the Ein Sof himself, Chulu. Okay, tomorrow we're going to learn, he's going to challenge this, but we're going to see Be'ezus Hashem that the Kav is attached. What's with the Tzimtzum that seems to have cut everything off from the Orein Sof before the Tzimtzum? Let's leave that Be'ezus Hashem for class number 13. Meanwhile, let Mashiach be here today.